Hey, it's Zach from Videoblivious. Thank you for downloading and listening to the podcast, and I hope you've subscribed already. This is an explainer episode to just kind of lay the land as to how the podcast came to be, what you can expect, how this is going to work, and that way we didn't have to bake that into the first episode. Maybe The Never-Ending Story is not a movie you really liked, and you skipped that one. Well, you didn't miss the backstory of the episode. That episode stands on its own, as they all will. But this episode here, this short little explainer, is going to tell you what you can expect, how it came to be, and all that good stuff. So my name is Zach Bennett. I was born in 1981, and as of recording this, it's 2023. I am now 42 years old, and I grew up in a time where VHS tapes were ubiquitous. Blockbuster Video was there, and actually we had a little video store in my hometown called iMagic Video. We didn't even have Blockbuster. That was the small town I lived in on the outskirts of Nashville, Tennessee. But we had all these movies available to us, and so many great movies in the 1980s, and you could go down there and for $1.99 rent it, take it home and watch it, and I just never did. Every time I'd go to the video store, I would go straight to the Nintendo games, and I would rent a Nintendo game, and that would be my weekend entertainment. I just wouldn't watch these movies. I didn't have much interest in it. I was much more interested in playing those video games or spending time with my friends or doing a plethora of other things, but movies were never really high on my list. So I've always been aware of these great movies from the 1980s. I just never got around to watching them. Throughout the late 80s, through the 90s, as I grew up into teenage years and into adulthood, these movies were always there, and I knew they were there, and I've heard of them, and I know the plots of a lot of them, but I've never actually seen them. So that's why I wanted to start this podcast, because now I'm in my 40s and I don't have a lot to do these days. I would kind of like to spend my time watching these old movies. I've caught up on a few. In the last year or so, I saw War Games finally, and man, I loved that movie. I grew up with Back to the Future. That's probably one of the biggest movies of the 80s. Has always been one of my favorites. But there have been a lot of movies from the 80s that I just haven't seen, and as I've caught a couple of them in the last year or so, I said, okay, this was an interesting time in film, in an interesting time in pop culture. I want to get caught up. And what better way to do that than to talk about these great movies with people who have been watching them for years. They've watched them over and over. They've memorized every line. They know everything about it. It's on their top 5 all-time favorite movie list. And here's me, who's never seen the damn thing. So that's why I wanted to do this. I want to watch these movies and give my perspective as somebody who's never seen it, not even one time, and talk to people who have seen them over and over and over and love them so much. I think it'll give an interesting perspective, because maybe my guest that week will have a heavy sense of nostalgia for this movie that maybe hasn't aged well at all. And here I am coming into it, never seeing it before, with a 2023 brain, 2024 maybe if you're listening to it, if we get that far. But watching it with today's sensibilities and going, okay, that didn't age well, or that would never be made today, or that was timeless, or that was absolutely phenomenal, or maybe I'm just going to transport my brain back to the 80s for a minute, forget the world today, and just enjoy this movie. That's what I want to do. And I want to talk about it with these people that I've been friends with for a while, and some of my newer friends as well. So I put out a call on social media. I put out a Google spreadsheet to the people who followed me on Instagram and Facebook and whatnot, and just said, here are 55 movies from the 1980s that I have never seen. Put your name next to one if you want to talk about this on a podcast with me. And within a few hours, I had about 20 names that have filled up almost half of those movies. So I've got a list, and I'm ready to go down. I'm ready to watch these. I'm ready to discuss them. And that's what Videoblivious is going to be all about, is talking about these great movies from the perspective of someone who has been watching them for decades, and from the perspective of someone who has never seen them before. So I hope you enjoy this podcast as we go through the weeks and months and however long this is going to go on. I have no idea, but I hope it lasts for a while, because I've got a lot of movies to catch up on, and that's what I plan on doing. So thank you for listening to the explainer episode of Videoblivious. Now, go find whichever episodes we've released, see which movies you love, or maybe you didn't, and take a listen to those episodes, and I hope you enjoy it. And remember to subscribe, give us a high rating if you enjoy the podcast. Even if you don't enjoy the podcast, just be a nice person. Give me a high rating. I'd appreciate it. Thank you so much, and enjoy Videoblivious.